Hello, welcome. I'm going to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, and that's artificial intelligence, robots, science, geek stuff, basically. I'm so passionate about it that I recently bought myself a new car, a Tesla. And the only reason I bought this car is because it drives itself. And it actually does it. It's fantastic. I took my father out for a ride in the car, and he said, "This is magic. This is just magic that is driving this." And it's not magic, it's maths. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time today telling you why I think artificial intelligence is important. And is robots, are they going to take your job? Let's find out. A bit about me, I'm married. I actually have 4 kids now, but I've given up updating my profile picture. And I run a company called Intillery over on Turing Road. Right, we're going to go back now to 2000 BC. And believe it or not, this is the world's first Cd-Rom. It was found in Crete in 1908. It has 45 different symbols on it, and we have no idea what it means. Some people think it's a hoax, but we know it is really old. Then later we come forward about 1,000 years, and this is some Mayan writing. And we've managed to understand this is Mayan mathematics, that a complex way of working out mathematics and charting the stars, etc. The common thing here is that right from our early civilization, civilization has written things down. We collected data. We wanted to understand our world. We want to know what's going on. Early on in the computing, we strove to record and understand as much data as possible. That thing there is called a Mercury delay line, those who are interested. Very nice piece of kit. And I found this, when I first did this presentation a couple of years ago, I found this chart, and it was about how much data we're producing. And they reckon by 2020 we'll be producing 45 zettabytes of data. I have no idea what a zettabyte is, but it's bigger than the petabyte. It's 1,024 petabytes. Now, this is out of date. We're probably producing that every week now. Cars are producing that much data. Cambridge Analytics, they're producing a lot of data. But the point being, there is so much data being produced. And data is the key to artificial intelligence. I have a couple of chaps on here. You may have heard of the first one, a chap named Alan Turing and Gray Walter. And they were instrumental in setting out the ideas and the growth of artificial intelligence, or robots, as we're going to get to. Gray Walter, he produced some of the first robots. And Alan Turing, he went on to build the Enigma machine that helped crack the German codes in the Second World War and brought the end of the war forward by 2 years. Fantastic guy. Well, one of the things that, in my world and the geek world, that he's most famous for is something called the Turing Test. So anybody, hands up if you've heard of the Turing Test. Oh, fantastic. So the Turing Test says that if you or anybody has a conversation with the screen and you can't determine whether it's a human or a robot or computer, then we've deemed to pass the Turing Test. Now, every year, there's a prize that's run, started off by MIT, to determine whether we've passed this point yet. As of yet, we're not. We haven't done this, but we're getting close. In 2015, it was partially won, this prize was. The team behind one of the programs managed to convince the person taking the test that they were talking to a 15-year-old Latvian boy. That was strange. But they couldn't determine whether it was not. So they got that context, and it worked. I think it was fantastic. Now, this chap is a chap named Isaac Asimov, and he was one of the first authors to pick up on the idea of robots and artificial intelligence and talk about how that's going to transform our world. Now, again, why I'm interested in artificial intelligence, it's a bit of a selfish reason. I want my robot butler. And that's really important, a robot butler, because that's where we are going to get to. We are going to have robots who are going to pick up the work for us. They're going to do these things. And that's going to transform and change our lives immeasurably. We won't recognize where we are once robots start doing this. But that leaves us with quite a large problem. And Asimov created these famous 3 laws that, well, if a robot, and I'm not talking science fiction, I'm not talking about something that might happen in 50, 100 years. We're close to this. If a robot genuinely has a type of free will that it can make decisions around what it's doing on a day-to-day basis, why would it work for us? Why would it not take control? So Asimov came up with these 3 laws to ensure that robots can't take over the world and do all the Terminator-style things. Okay, we're going to bring it back a bit now. In 1888, a chap named Santiago Cajal, I think you pronounce it, he isolated and discovered something called a neuron and a synapse in the brain. He didn't really know what it was, but under the microscope, and he saw these things from a slice of brain, and he was the first person to detail what this was. If we fast forward to about the 1940s, neuromedicine and biology, computer scientists started to understand what neurons, synapses, and how the brain works. They started to model that and understand. Now, in the brain, when you were born, you have these things called neurons and synapses. A neuron has synapses that are connected to other neurons, and they have synapses, that wires, think of them as wires, that are connected to other parts of the brain, like your eyes, your ears, your muscles, etc. And when you're born with 100 billion neurons. And each neuron can have up to 7,500 synapses connected to other places. That's like 45 quadrillion synapses that are in the brain. It's the most complicated thing in the universe that we know of. In 1943, I forget the chap's name, a computer scientist constructed what's called an artificial neural net that modeled the way that the brain worked. Created these artificial neurons, synapses between them, and used mathematical formula to determine whether the information flow carried on or not. The brain's quite simple, actually, in a simple sense. It takes electrical impulses that flow through the brain, and if the electrical impulse is strong enough, it passes those on and they form patterns within the brain. And we don't really understand how that works, we just know that it does. And this has been carried forward into neural nets, artificial neural nets and computers. We take input from cameras, etc. We feed it into the neurons and the synapses, and it learns from this data. One of the first things that a neural net was used for was decoding handwriting. There used to be hundreds of people who would transcribe letters, type them up, etc. One of the first things that was done as early in the 1940s was something called a perceptron. Handwriting was decoded into text. The next thing that came along was speech recognition. Can anyone remember speech recognition in the 1990s on the desktop? It was terrible. It didn't work. You just shouted at the computer. Today, speech recognition, we take it for granted. We were only talking about this before, about Amazon Echo, etc. Everyone's saying, "Hey, Siri." Does anybody know how that came about? How the power of that was created? Google created something in 2007, I think it was, called Google Voice. You could phone up and you could ask for a search over the phone, say, "Can you recommend a restaurant?" or "Can you give me directions for this?" etc. What that was for was to capture phrases and language and words with meaning from as much of the population as they could. They captured all this data, which was transcribed, and they understood the meaning of it and had recordings, and fed that into a neural network. From there, they were able to understand speech. So coming back to my car, my driverless car, how does that work? I mean, it's not magic. Well, maybe it is. What the car is doing is it has a series of trained networks that do their job. And this is an example of spotting a car and understanding what it is. This neural net, one of the neural nets, has had loads of data about finding a wheel. Another one that has had loads of data about finding the colour grey, found in the Audi sign. And you put all those things together, and the computer can understand that, hey, there's a grey Audi A7. But what does the future hold? Now, today, we're not at a place what's called general artificial intelligence. What we have is a series of very clever mathematical constructs that are able to do things like drive a car, route a package, drive a train, flip a burger. That's where we are today. But we are very close to turning that into general intelligence, where robots will literally be walking around and having a conversation with you. So the final thing I'm going to talk about is, what does that do to humanity? If robots can do our jobs for us, if robots can flip burgers, if robots can deliver the post, can drive trains, lay bricks, anything, what do we do? How do we earn a living? Now we have to think about, what does that mean to earn a wage? How do we sustain ourselves if there are no jobs for people? Even the most skilled jobs could possibly be taken by robots. And there's this idea, I'm running out of time, so I'll go quickly. There's this idea of something called universal basic income, which says that everybody will just be paid an equal amount of money to live and to survive. Well, not the dole, not any of that kind of money. A proper wage where we can exist. What you then do with the rest with your time is up to you. And I hope we can use that to better humanity. We can do environmental projects, we can learn, we can help each other, because we take away the stress of having to earn a wage just to sustain ourselves. Thank you very much.